Hold on. Here we are. We are live. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
I can hear you.
Hello, Richard.
Hello. Hello,
I
Anna.
don't
How are
think
you?
I'm not too bad. I've been enjoying the sunshine for a change, to be fair. We've been, obviously, as you know, probably having a really rainy and cloudy weather for a very long time. So it's quite nice to enjoy a little bit of sunshine, to be fair. And I think a garden somewhat kind of needed it. Because I'm pretty sure you know.
You're in Wales, aren't you?
Yes, South Wales. Yes,
So
and we've
yeah,
been
so it's
really.
interesting. It's interesting to know what your weather is like then for the first half of the year, because I'm down in the south coast near Brighton, in Worthing, and we've had only really in the last 6 to 8 weeks have we had the beginnings of any sense that there was a summer, but we've only been permitted, once every 5 or 6 days we might get a bit of sunshine, then
Yeah,
cloud, then a bit more sunshine, then a bit of cloud, and
yeah.
so I don't know what it's like
This
being in Wales.
well, I think in UK we had about 6 months, 5 6 months worth of constant rain, and I could name in that time about 10 days when we had dry days, like fully dry days. And I know with the spring they kind of let us have a little bit, but I think they're a little bit more stringent these days for a bit of a sunshine and really clear skies. So unfortunately, it's taken toll on a lot of growing things in a garden and generally insects, as we might know. So many things been happening, as I'm sure you're aware of as well. But it's yes, unfortunately, it's not been the best of years, and you probably agree that it's probably not the worst of it yet. I wouldn't imagine.
No, I think they've got some fingers in pies that we have yet to see. That's not really the best way of putting it, but you know what I mean. There's
I like
the
pies.
plan is unfolding.
Yes, I know. It's finally it's a bit quicker. Would you say a little bit quicker? For me, I find it's a little bit happening sooner than anticipated, or you can see this a little bit more than over the past, say, 20, 30 years has been in the making. It's a little bit more, whether because we're a little bit more aware to what's been happening. Obviously, we've got to be careful what we're saying just for the sake of both of our channels, but to the things that have been genuinely happening, it seems to be, and many people are agreeing that whatever has been genuinely happening, it's just been happening just that little bit too soon and too fast.
Well, to be honest, I'd like to get it over with. So can we have it all now? Can we have it all at this weekend, and then
Yeah,
thereafter we're
we'll deal
back
with it.
on having it's done.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny that you say that because actually many, obviously I count myself as a prepper. My channel is about obviously the preparedness for things that are coming, whether it be little things or the big things, and of course, being fully aware of the agenda that is coming our way. And many people saying, well, it's kind of deep inside when you put that much effort on preparing, you kind of feel like you want it to be over and done with. You want things to happen because then you can implement things you've been prepping for. However, I totally understand and I think that the level of preparedness majority of people have are going to be nowhere near sufficient probably for a final outcome of things as they planned, I think. But that could be just my opinion.
Well, I mean, one of the irritating things is that you can prepare and store. You can store stuff in cupboards and under floorboards or wherever you put it. Time goes on, and you start to think, "Is this stuff going off?
No, you're
when the
fine.
balloon goes up, is it going to go off? Do I need?" So then, what I've been doing is I've been buying some new bits and pieces, and then I have to go into the old bits and pieces and say, right, I better take those out because they're like, what's the sell date? Cool, blimey, and just keep renewing the
Yeah,
later dates, and then I've got to eat this stuff, which may not be the most healthiest stuff because it's all tinned and not
yeah,
fresh, and you think, well, I better use that up, and if we go on at this rate, I may have eaten it all up into anticipation, and then when the balloon goes up, there'll be just one tin of baked beans, and that'll be it to share around everyone.
yeah. But
But
no, I think
as my
you are safe. You are safe
as my
with this stocking stuff.
oh, good. Oh, that's all right. I was going to say, as my mum used to say, once it's gone, it's gone.
Oh no! I think many people make this assumption of. I know we've gone straight into the tin stuff, but tins, and I have many tins myself consumed really many years past, and it's misconception. the date on the tin has been introduced by European Union like 1990. So it's vaguely there just for the companies and for the shops to keep track of what's old stock, what's new, so they can rotate. But generally, I had the tins, like, my goodness, we're eating now baked beans. I'm not, proud to say this, but 4 years past date. It's nothing wrong with that. Unless you
No, I'm sure they're fine, aren't they? Baked beans.
so-
I mean, they're so processed and full of goodness knows what.
Everything.
They won't go off for decades.
Exactly. So you've got nothing to worry about it from
No.
this point. But nonetheless, genuinely, thank you so much for giving us opportunity to appear. I know you are a very busy man. Like, you've got your fingers in many pies.
Well, I mean, people always say you must be very busy, and I am relatively busy. It's just I'd much rather not be busy, to be honest. One enjoys a bit of downtime, and so when I'm doing my diary, I make sure that I don't my girlfriend Julia will say that you're always putting too many things and saying yes to too many people and all of that.
Yeah.
But I always, usually in the evenings, I don't do anything. I'll sit in front of the fire, unless we're at an event doing a talk or something. But I'll sit in front of. I have a wood burning stove. Then you can see the fire through the glass, and that's my television, because I don't watch mainstream media, and I try not to watch too much YouTube.
Yeah.
Although it's easy to get hooked into something, and then you go, I better just watch the next episode. So it's a bit of an oxymoron if I don't watch any, because they'll say, hang on a minute, you're producing content, but you're never watching any. And then there's loads of people who, like yourself, that you sort of, I better keep up with all these people. I'm appearing on their show. So
Can I
try to.
Sorry, excuse me. I just move you there. Sorry, because I look both sides if I look the other way. Sorry, I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
You look. So which way? If I look that way, it looks like I'm looking at you.
No, you're fine. It's just me because my iPad's on the side and the camera's that way, and I look funny.
Oh, I see.
That way. It looks like I look funny. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do try to keep. I think one of the most important things that we can do is to become more simple in our lives and de-stress. Turn the telly off. Not watch too much mainstream media, which is making us fearful. Did my sign just drop down?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It was a sign.
Yeah, there you go. It's the universe highlighting that we need more farmers.
We will talk about farming in a minute.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So I just think a simple life, actually not being too busy is really beneficial for us, because I think we've just been in this world that's got busier and busier and faster, and we've had these mobile phones which keep us in communication all the time. And now we're joining WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups and goodness knows what, and we don't have any time for ourselves. And I think that's deliberate, that we've been suckered, that our attention and our energy is always somewhere else. We're not focusing in on ourselves and our thoughts and connect. Some people meditate, some people do mindfulness, some people just, like me, sit blankly into the fire thinking,
that's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, I can tell you. Sit there smoking my pipe, getting raw ingredients and cooking a nice meal, sometimes on my own, sometimes with the lovely Julia. And we just take it easy. And I think that's more and more what people should be doing, because we're pedaling like nobody's business, getting stressed. Then we're getting ill. Then we're going to the GP, which may not be a good idea, and taking these more stress, little white pills that have side effects, and actually, a walk in nature, just relaxing, taking our mind off for a few minutes, centering, all those sort of things. I'm sure your audience all know about. And more of that, please. Thank you very much. So I do try.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do try not to be too busy, even though people say, "Oh, you're a very busy man."
It just looks on the media that you do, but again, you got to do what you got to do, don't you? But you're talking about the phones and stuff. Again, we're slightly digressing, but there was like a quite powerful picture that you might see on social media of a child, and there's a mobile phone, and it's leading a child on the leash, and the kid's forever looking, and it's tripping up because all he's done is so fixated, and we are so fixated on the social media, like you say, TV, everything in our life, the electricity, we're consumed by electrical things. Obviously the things I've been talking about in, the storms and everything else, and the power outages and all this kind of there. But in the reality, if that just goes off, everybody will be found or majority will be so stuck because we're so used to that. But as you say,
Well,
being in nature, it's super important. It's what people need to do.
I say bring on the power cuts.
Yeah, I
I
kind of
say,
excited a little bit too, because
I mean,
have you heard?
no, I haven't heard anything, but I would say bring them on, bring the power cuts, because I think more than anything else, once you suddenly find, oh, I can't turn my lights on, I can't get online, I can't cook my dinner, people will start to wander out in the street, talk to their neighbors. You got a power cut? Oh, you've got the same thing. God, what should we do? I tell you what, I've got some coal in the back. Should we get a barbecue going? I think that these sort of things will actually bring people together again, and they'll sit round a fire. Somebody might have some chops in their freezer that's just about to go out. So people will be emptying their freezers because they'll have to cook it or it'll go off because there's no power. And I think, people will start to share again a bit more, as long as these power cuts don't go on for weeks on end, of course. But the occasion,
sorry, wouldn't it?
well, that would be. But then we would do something. And that's the thing. I think until you've got that hardship, we're quite happy to just acquiesce, go with the flow, laissez-faire. But the minute the power goes off for any length of time, we'll start going back to the analog ways, and we'll start learning skills. And I think that's to our benefit, because all the time they let us just sit and rot or ferment in front of a screen doing whatever nonsense it is. We're not benefiting ourselves. No. So I say bring it on.
Yeah, but do you agree that people need to really look a little bit ahead and try to prepare and understand? Because obviously, as you say, for the short term, when things are happening, yes, best friends with neighbors as you do, because, well, if you're good terms with your neighbors, and yes, you have barbecues, that kind of thing. But then at any point, because obviously knowing what potentially is, meant to be happening in terms of the reset and, dare I say it, but because when things like power goes off, and every time, because we live in a village and it happens quite a lot, and every time power goes off, you're like, is that it? Is that going to be for 1 hour, 2 hours, or a week, or 2 weeks, or 2 months, or 2 years? And that's the thing. So at what point many people understand, like, sharing your pork chops, and obviously food is great, but then if it's your last meal before the power goes off until, I don't know, like a year or two, you'd be like, oh, that's a bit of a pickle, isn't it?
It is, but on the one, I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword in a way, because the people who prep, and I know that's what you do, and I've got a little bit of a store, but I don't take it terribly seriously, and maybe I should. But because in the end, if the power goes off and there's no food and all the rest of it, you're sort of saying, well, I'm all right, Jack. Sod you lot. I'm all right. Yeah. And if you're somebody who believes in humanity and building communities and coming from, dare I say, the heart and all of that, the I'm all right, Jack. I don't care about you, and you're not coming in or whatever. Yeah. It sort of goes against the grain, really, doesn't it? About sharing, caring.
Bit, but if you, I think it's again because we won't know when the thing's happening, how long things are happening for, and I think initially, as a community, like if a neighbor pops into me and goes out, like in the a few years back with the what's been happening, of course we had, as a preppers, we just had a bathroom equipment, to share around, and I had no issue with doing this because I knew this is something that was going to pass, type thing. And I think generally in any circumstances when something would happen, initially we all be happy to, especially as a prepper, I'd be more than happy to help my elderly or normal neighbors next door, because you will hope that this issue is not going to stick around. But I think the longer time will go by, the more introvert you will get within yourself, because you will know there's going to be more people out there that will come and kind of like pest you for it, and then it will start be more aggressive potentially. The gangs potential will start to develop. We're all talking about on really grand scale of unrest in terms of no power or something else. So yes, generally, it's kind of a little bit selfishness, like you want to try to keep yourself to yourself. But initially I would help, especially where we are, there is, few.
The thing is that, I mean, the thing is though, if you live in fear and you think ultimately there's going to be these gangs, they're going to tear the house apart to get to the food because they're starving and all the rest of it, that's a very it's a very easy picture to paint, isn't it? And put us all in fear. And I actually think the reverse is likely to happen, because actually I think people need one another. And how long can you be barricaded in your house with 24,000 tons of baked beans? and actually, you know, it's not really answering the problem, isn't it?
No, it's not.
And if everybody's doing that, nobody's interacting, you may as well be in a lockdown. But actually, if people are coming out and saying, look, it looks like we're in for the long haul here, various people will have lots of different skills. So somebody might be good at carpentry, somebody might be good at metalwork, somebody. And the thing is, you really, right from the beginning, as soon as you start to get a sense that something is in for the long haul, you want to start building that community around you, I think, rather than isolating yourself to be, you know, the greedy. And I don't, you know, please don't take any of this personally.
I totally understand what you mean. And
but
you know why I say that?
Yeah.
No, go on. Sorry, go on.
Well, I'm just saying that I think this is for me, it seems to be the golden opportunity to actually then start to build a community, because you're going to need that community for the next year, for the next 10 years, you know, and that's the beginning of something. And if you've got that attitude that actually we're in this together and we all have skills, we'll all get through this, I don't think the gang thing will happen. And let me just say this, because I interviewed a bloke last year sometime who was Polish. Well, he still is Polish. He's Polish by birth, so he's still Polish. Bless him. That didn't disappear. And he was around when the Berlin Wall came down. And what he said was, at the time, the government collapsed and there was anarchy. In other words, it was every man for himself or self-rule, depending on how you wanted to look at it. And he said it was the best time because people helped one another. If somebody needed a ladder to go and fix their roof, somebody else would give them a hand, because then they would say, oh, look, I've got this problem. I need to dig a hole in the garden. Can you? And so people just helped. The government started to reform, saw people doing this, realized they weren't paying any taxes, because why would you? There was no government. And they set up, then the government reformed and set up martial law, which was the worst thing that could happen. He said, basically, when it came down to it, the people were able to govern themselves because deep inside them, we have morals. We know what's right and wrong. And yes, there's always going to be the odd gang, just as there is now. But probably those gangs won't be manipulated by some nefarious whatever, because they won't be around if the balloon goes up. They'll be off in their bunker doing their thing. And ultimately, I think people are like water, and they'll follow the line of least resistance. So if it means that you can just get together and work on something, and you can have a house and people will help you build it, and there's some security in that because there's a group of you, I think more people will do that. And the people who are barricaded in their places in fear are the ones that will suffer the most. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a huge divide, believe this or not, in the prepping community. There's a whole thing is whether you are going to be a lone wolf as a person, like you basically take yourself away from the community in a collapse situation, or you're going to be a part of the, the big group and you create something else. And I think generally, if you think that you're prepped enough, you think, well, you'd be able to do this by yourself. At the same time, because none of you at the time will be aware, and of course, unless certain circumstances where you might be aware of the timeline of a stage TF scenario type thing. But generally, I think the people that are prepared will kind of try to stay away, and the people that maybe not will try to create the communities because they have nothing to try to get them through a certain time. What the worrying part, I think, is the people that think they're going to kind of stay inside and, trying to cater for themselves. Because who said that, say, for example, if I have some preparedness things and you have half a street that don't, then all these people are going to be relying on me to feed the whole street if I become part of that community. Does that kind of make sense? And that's where it makes
I totally get it. You don't have to sort of give everything away, do you? But you could be part of the community and help them help themselves. My question would be, what happens to the preppers when the food runs out for them? I read books by John Seymour, who was around in the 60s. And this was just about self-sufficiency. He bought a house in Norfolk. I can't remember how many acres he had, something like 10 acres. And he and his family had his wife and 2 kids. And he said it was an absolute struggle to be self-sufficient, even when you're plowing the field, you're growing stuff, you've got pigs, you had a cow for milk. He said it was so hard, and that was with the 4 of them, to be self-sufficient. Now, if you're a prepper barricaded in and you've got 10 tons of tins or whatever it is, when the tins run out, you might have your crossbow and shoot the odd rabbit and things, but ultimately you're going to need to integrate with the community. And if you've been an outsider, any community that's grown will see them as, well, why should we bring you in? I mean, I'm giving a different perspective to it, because most people
unless you have space as a prepper to be able to do this. But it is hard, like growing stuff.
It's hard on your own. I don't think people realize quite how hard it would be on their own to, you'd probably do it for a few months, but you're isolated, things will fail, the rain will come, there'll be droughts, this, that, and the other. Where are you going to get your seeds? You've got to propagate. Whereas even if you're on your own, but you can get into a community with other people who've got a couple of acres here and a couple of acres over there. This one might grow pigs. He might have a cow. You might do potatoes and carrots. You can then at least trade with one another, and you haven't got to try and do everything.
No, that sounds like a brilliant idea. And
sounds like a dream to me.
It does. And especially
sounds like a dream.
Later on, your little farm that you were attending to. But it's way on the quick subject of prepping that it's kind of snuck in there, didn't it? But nonetheless, so what do you think? How would you think then? Because I myself, as a prepper, I love the idea of community and people growing and sharing. But I always think that there's going to be always someone that will come and want to jeopardize this. Be it like we're talking about little groups. They would not. If you ever seen any of those, say The Walking Dead or any other programs, that when the civilization collapses, there's always going to be someone somehow, 200 or whatever 20 years down the line, wearing like really smart armors that made some in a factory after everything shut down, but nonetheless. And then they're trying to intimidate the little communities of people. They're trying to do this, and they seem to be always winning, because they'll just come in there with their guns and things. And
but what you're talking about is fiction that's written in a certain way to entertain people with certain cliche tropes, and not necessarily real life. I'm sure there'll always be people who will want to rape, pillage and steal. Of course there will. I mean, let's not be silly about that. I'm absolutely certain. And if you go back to the Neolithic times, you'll know that or even the Bronze Age times, they had hill forts, and people were in one hill fort, and another bunch of treacherous folk would come along to rustle the cattle away and what have you. So that will happen, but I think that will be rare, because ultimately people want to be together. And the other thing is, if it's just one or two lone wolves, you're obviously going to be much stronger in a group, particularly if you don't have very many skills. You might have one or two skills. You might be a singer who can plant potatoes, but you might be at least that you can entertain people in the evening whilst you're planting the potatoes, while somebody who's maybe good at, I don't know, electronics can put together a radio network so that you could transmit some signal to perhaps another group somewhere else and say, we're going to come up the M1 or what's left of it, and we're going to bring you your carrots that you've ordered. I just think there's safety in numbers, and also there's friendships, there's partnerships, and there's less fear. Fear seems to be the thing that everybody is falling for, and I think that's what the dark forces want us to be, in fear, instead of looking how can we actually get on with one another, unite, come together, share and grow and be
It's nice to hear the perspective, obviously. But do you generally think that the majority of people, that's how it's going to pan out if, God forbid, something happens? Do you think that majority of the things will be running fairly smoothly if community comes together? Do you think the decent community will be outnumbered by the occasional potential, group of people? Do you think they'll prevail in the scenario of
Well,
essentially.
let's just look at life as we are at the moment. Most people, that there are more of us who are not stealing, who are not breaking the law, and yet we could do it quite easily because there's not enough policemen. They're all young and immature, and don't know how to conduct themselves, and they're all sort of in these big corporations and what have you. But we generally, if you find something on the street, unless it's a wallet with £100 in it or something, you might, the least thing people do is just put it on the wall. So somebody else, there's a shoe here, I'll shove it on the wall. So somebody else can take it. But I think generally people on the whole are actually quite honest and upright people. And I think we when push comes to shove, we need other people. We're not trained by an army to be these sort of soldiers who can be incredibly on our own, observant of everything, have a range of knowledge. Most of the awake people who know that the nefarious things are over 50. Most of them think, and I don't want to be rude, but most of them think that they can go and get back to the land at 65 or 70 and spend 8 hours digging holes and planting potatoes, and it's not going to affect them. Of course it is. We need people. We need people to sing and dance and thrive and keep our spirits up, and people to moan to talk to hug, all those things. We need people. We are a social animal. And we need to get together. And then if there's a problem, we'll all line up and face it. But there'll always be rogue ones. But if we worry continually about the occasional rogue ones or what's going to happen, we'll never get through any of it, will we?
No. Do you think that not say the media to blame, but let's call it social media so much to, not say to blame, but to put this kind of apron on the people to say that you should be afraid and should be by yourself? I've analyzed the many videos, and I spoke to I did an interview with the chappie a couple of months back about the sort of psychoanalyze and the human behavior. And for us as a humans, of feeding on fear seemed to be the thing. And I find myself time and time again kind of falling into that kind of thing. And for me, it's like, well, if this is going to be that bad, then better by yourself, because you But do you think the media or social media, shall I say, got a lot to answer for that? Rather than pushing us as a group together? I know we're digressing off the farming thing.
No. I think on the one hand, you only have to think about what attracts people to. If you're a YouTuber, so you're putting a thumbnail together. If you put a thumbnail together that says, "Oh my God, look what just happened," millions of people will start to watch the video. But if you just have a very benign one and say, "Here's a great way to grow a tomato," it's like, whatever. People are drawn to horror, aren't they? They're drawn to, because it's a primeval thing. If the lion is coming towards them, oh my God, they want to know about it. Whereas if someone says, there's a nice rock to sit on for half an hour, it's like, okay, I can do that anytime. But that lion coming towards me with its claws and its fangs and all of that is going to eat me if I don't do something. So I think on the one hand, people are attracted to the fear factor purely because it's a primeval thing. But I think that mainstream media and YouTubers, whether they know it or not, they want bums on seats. They want people to watch their videos. So they will sort of get, the old clickbait thing. They'll say, "Oh, Mike, this is really," and I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. If I was to just put, sort of benign titles on the videos saying, "Oh, isn't it great that we can, we should laugh more," people are just going to go, and whereas, if you nobody's laughing, what's happening? And then it goes into a sort of nice video about, why we aren't laughing, and we should laugh at these evil people and take the power away. But that, to me, that's the thing. So I think that people are attracted to fear, and the problem is they do take it in, and people, but also people do like to see people like you prepping, because I think also there's that, oh, I'd love to do that. And instead of actually doing it, they'll watch other people do it. Like an ex-girlfriend of mine loved food, but beautifully cooked, the high-end food. And she would watch all these programs on the telly, and she would say it's my food porn. And she would watch this stuff because she would love to do it, but never did it. She would go, oh gosh, that's how they do it. Oh, look at that. Isn't that amazing? And I would say to her, well, why don't we cook that? And she said, oh, it's a lot of faff, isn't it? I'd much rather watch somebody else do it. And you think, so yeah, it is odd. So I think we have been dumbed down, and we're not used to doing things. And it's much easier to watch other people doing these things. And I think that we have been put into a state of fear, and we're very fearful. We're fearful because, I mean, the main reason is we don't do anything for ourselves anymore. All our responsibilities we've given away. Someone else will take the bins away. You don't have to take the bins down to the tip and away, because somebody else will do it for you. Somebody else will pick up the part. You'll have things delivered. You don't even have to go down to the town anymore to go and get a parcel, because you can just buy stuff.
What town?
What town? And if you want to look something up, you don't have to go to the library anymore. And for God's sake, if you want to turn the telly over, you've got one of these things. You don't even have to get out of the seat and tune the telly. We've been
ask certain individual or certain mechanical device to do it for you now.
Yeah, and map reading. Nobody reads a map. They've got a sat nav. So we've been so dumbed down that I think that we're fearful that how would I cope? Especially the young people. I mean, look at young people today. They haven't a bloody clue how to walk down the street. They can't even dress themselves. A lot of these people. I mean, I don't mean to stand there like some old fogey moaning about it, but you can see how they can't talk properly. They can't string a sentence together without it's like this, isn't it? Like, no, I mean like a. And you think, oh, for goodness sake, if you need to communicate with me, I'd like to understand the language you're talking, please, because I'm speaking English. Thanks very much. And it is a shame. And so I think people are fearful because they're pretty impotent. And they would not know, but that's why I say bring it on. Let's have the power cuts. Let's have this situation. It would be a pig. I agree. It would be an absolute, oh my God, we've got to get off our asses and do something. But ultimately, for a people who've left other people doing everything, when we take back responsibility for ourselves, there's a certain sense of pride. Freedom. And achievement and satisfaction, and suddenly you're living again, and you're not just existing.
Absolutely, I got to say, from the day one when I started watching your videos, the humbleness, but yet at the same time the openness, and you just say it how it is, like you just obviously said about the young people, and it's very for many. Probably, I suppose, maybe to do with the age, don't get me wrong, but to be able to come up with this and say this, I admire you for being able to say this without worrying. Obviously, I know you had a bit of a stick from the YouTube, haven't you? Unfortunately, and I admire you for continuing to push the truth and subjects out there, regardless what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is my opinion. And nobody, and I'd get a lot of stick from time to time, and they say, oh, Richard, you shouldn't say that, or aren't you a bit backward, or you're this, that, and the other. And it's like, doesn't matter. This is my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I don't expect my viewers to agree with me. And sometimes I'll get these emails and say, oh, I like that bit. I don't always agree with you, Richard. It's like, well, fantastic. That makes life interesting that you don't agree with me, or those things, because I don't always agree with anybody else, but I would love to hear their point of view, because I can learn from it. And then I might go, do you know what? I'm wrong. You're right. I actually agree with you. I think you're right. That's the way it should be. And unless we have those, unless people can put down their opinion, no matter how stark or rigid or backward their thinking is, unless they can actually say it, we can't learn from one another. No. So I've always been opinionated. It's true. I am.
Put you as far as you have. I'm pretty sure.
Well,
220,000 subscribers now.
Something like that. I mean, I think people are frightened of saying, and again,
Yeah.
self-censorship at the moment. It's just gone through the roof. People are, oh, I better not say that, and I better not say that, because, you know, people will attack me, and I don't want to put my head above the parapet. That's what they want. They want us to self-censor and be dumb little people, quiet little mice who just go around and obey and all that. They don't want us setting ourselves and going, hang on a minute, mate. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's right. I think you're making that up. I don't think you've got any power over me. Now, bog off. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm minding my own business.
I think people aware of. People are now wary of, now obviously with the government and everybody else stepping up. I think that's what's now silencing a lot of people. And of course, like, I don't talk about major, I mention things like we all do in the videos about certain things, and then things that are happening, like people getting, you know, sentenced to, like, you know, few months or a year in a jail for posting something. You're like, okay, well, you know, I've got a young kid. You've got to be careful, don't you? But it's, as you say, that's exactly what they want. They want us where they want us, don't they? So,
yeah, anyway. No, couldn't agree more. Anyway, sorry, yes.
That's right. Shall we go on to the farming part? Because that's the thing, well, kind of trending everywhere at the moment. It's not so trending, but it's been, and I'm glad to see it's been picked up by many people. The whole farming situation has been kicking off since, well, for a little while, but since last year, since the protests and stuff. Because obviously you've interviewed many farmers, amongst many people, which again, watching this, it's absolutely eye-opening for many people. If they haven't watched you, obviously they ought to scroll through the channel and find things that are relevant to what they want to watch. You covered many people, many interviews covering many things, and there was some really, really good information out there that you've kind of uncovered from the people within, if you know, I'll leave it at that, within the certain things. But when you obviously interviewed farmers, so would you say a lot of farmers are currently awake to the current agenda of the, you know, what's happening with the you know, no farmers, no food? I get an impression that some of them are a little bit clueless still.
I think the whole farming thing is like so many different areas, like with education and universities and things. I think it's pushed farmers into an area in which they don't understand what's going on globally. So what do I mean by that? Since the Second World War, which seems like lifetime away, 80 something years ago, farming changed from being effectively lots of small farms, subsistent farming, almost a country rural life by people in a community around villages and small towns.
Yeah.
And then it went into this industrial, we've got, after the war, we've got to feed people because we're all on rations, and we'd been trying desperately to sort of feed people during the war because of the convoy ships that were being targeted, which was bringing all that food. I think it was 3/4 of our food was coming from overseas, so we were only growing a quarter of it. Then during the war, we were desperately, you know, dig for victory, all that kind of stuff, and people were desperately getting down to it and understood the importance of food. And then after the war, we sort of went, well, we can never be in that situation ever again. We've got to be self-sufficient. And suddenly this farming lust for expansive fields, getting rid of hedgerows, growing commodities instead of food. So now we've started to see the beginning of monoculture. And so that we, and as we did that, we saw the supermarkets suddenly come on scene with nutrient-free food, because the crops that were growing had been modified at that time, not GM modified, but they'd just been bred to give bigger kernels, to grow wheat lower to the ground so it was easier to produce. But in doing all of that, much of the goodness of the food had been removed, so much so that, you know, you've seen it with breakfast cereals. They have to sort of add all these vitamins and things back into it because the process of making your cornflakes had taken everything out. And so there we are. And then, of course, we start to see these artificial fertilizers. We start to see the pesticides, the herbicides, the insecticides poisoning the land. and we start to see the insects disappearing rather.
Yeah.
Bugs aren't sticking to windscreens when you drive down the road as they used to.
Good point, yeah.
If you ever went camping and had a light, you'd have moths and flies and all sorts of, grasshoppers and what have you leaping. Now you can do all that and you go, thank goodness for that. We can just sit here and nothing comes
outside,
in.
Yeah.
Which, it sounds great, but actually what's pollinating the ground? The soil, of course, we've seen has been eroded by this intensive farming. Animals are treated absolutely atrociously in huge numbers and injected with goodness knows what, which has not been healthy, and which has made the food not good for human consumption. And yet people are eating it. And then we get to that point where instead of people appreciating what food is, we take it for granted. It's no longer the number, apart from paying your bills, let's say your mortgage or whatever, it's no longer the big expense. It's actually very cheap. And so it's like, what should we do tonight? We'll have a pizza, we'll go down to have fish and chips, or we'll just get a TV dinner or something like that. So much so that we never even think about what we're going to eat because it's so abundant and it's there. And we forget that actually what it is that we're eating is not actually healthy at all. And so hence we've got turbo cancers and all sorts of illnesses, and people then are taking more pills, which gets into the water system and so on and so forth. And the other thing that happened is television comes along, and then the evil internet and YouTube and all of this and computers. People and families are no longer sitting around the table as a family, eating a home produced food that they got from a greengrocer, because the supermarkets have got those all out the way, so that most people now, because it's convenient, they've driven their cars, parked in the big parking lot, done all their shopping. I'm telling you a story that you obviously know and all your viewers will know, but this is what's happened. And so farming has got to that point now in which, in order to make money, and I saw a bloke the other day on a farming YouTube channel saying, I've got a 500-acre farm. I can't make it pay. You need to have at least 2,000 or 3,000 acres in order to make it pay. And I thought that's totally ridiculous, because I know, and Mark Byford, who you have on your channel quite a lot, knows that you can grow a huge amount of stuff in a very small area of land, really. And things like electroculture is coming back, and all this regenerative farming and different techniques that actually people were doing in the past, and we're all rediscovering. But the farmers are stuck in this old, I say old, I mean recent, but old, since the Second World War, this commodity growing. They're forgetting they're growing food. They don't know where it's going. There's a distributor, and it could be going. It might be in this country, or it might be going overseas, and they never know. And so to answer your question in a very extremely long-winded way, I think most of the farmers are really no longer farmers. They're just managers of commodities. Right. Whereas the smaller, most, I saw a guy in a tractor the other day at a filling station. There I was getting some diesel. He turns up in his tractor. He's got trainers, T-shirt. He's got a cap on. He's got his earbuds on. When he turns up in this massive, great big Jeremy Clarkson-sized tractor on a field, he's got his GPS. He never gets out the tractor. He doesn't get down to the soil and lift it up and get his feet dirty or anything like that. He whizzes around, sits in there, probably listening to a podcast or something, and has no notion really of what the landscape is and all of the things that a genuine farmer who's actually had his hand in the soil and is grown and nurtured, feels the energies from the earth, is caring about the wildlife. This bloke probably, if there were partridges in the field, would just churn them up with his blades, because there's no way he could see them or stop them. And that's your modern big commodity farmer. And so I think they don't know what the hell is going on. It's only the small and maybe the medium ones, and people like yourself and people like your viewers who want to get back to the old system where they are connected to the earth. They're the ones who understand what food is and what it's all about.
Yeah. Do you see, when you mentioned the farmer and the farmer's not being aware, there is an article I literally seen, I think yesterday, It's about the guy. He was a chicken farmer, and he got rid of like 800,000 chickens or 80,000 chickens, and he had that little like a barn, if you wish, and he's now apparently he put a bunch of containers, like the shipping containers in there for rental, because he couldn't make money from chicken eggs. And it's like, we've seen how much chicken eggs are, organic chicken eggs, in the supermarket. How on earth could you not make money if, like, I know how much the supermarkets pay per per egg. There's like 1p an egg, I think, per egg. But with that many eggs, with one barn, like a biggish barn, with that many chickens and that many eggs, you think you can make a living. But he chose to buy containers and then rent them out.
Well, I say good riddance to him. I mean, if he's got 80,000 chickens in one barn, no matter how big that barn is, that's a horrible way to bring up chickens, isn't it?
Well, I would assume they would have had. I haven't really delved into they didn't really tell you whether they had a bit of a run outside it. They just showed the guy standing there with a barn. You can put like good few tractors in there. We know how obviously the chickens are raised in this country anyway, which is appalling, unless you are going for organic or free range. But even though we really can't trust but nonetheless, looking at this, it's like, with that many chickens, that many eggs a day, because chicken will lay an egg pretty much a day until his age of like 5 or 6. So, well, how
I know it sounded controversial to say good riddance to him. He doesn't sound like the sort of farmer I'd like to buy eggs from, because I don't know what would be in those eggs. If they're battery farming, who wants to eat that kind of rubbish? To be honest with you. And of course, we're seeing farmers who are selling off or renting off their land to solar panels. I interviewed some residents who are going to be surrounded by these things. And farmers are being offered £1,000 an acre. Well, if you've got 100 acres and you've got £1,000, that's £100,000, 100 acres. You've got £100,000 for doing nothing.
Yeah.
For doing absolutely, so you don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and bring your cows in and milk them anymore. You can get rid of those cows. And there's one up in Lincolnshire. We interviewed somebody there. 27,000 acres. 27,000 acres of prime agricultural land going under solar panels. And
so they're giving it up.
So these are big landowners who are selling off to these venture capitalists who will put the infrastructure in, then they'll piss off. They don't live in the area, so they're not being blighted by it.
No.
And then somebody else will buy it in, and in 60 years' time, you've got basically brownfield sites full of concrete and various things. All the soil will be just dead. There'll be no life. And 27,000 acres of these flat solar glass panels.
What could you get with all this,
water. Well, I mean, where's the water going to go? It's just going to keep. So
what kind of solar are you going to get though?
Well, of course, if they're spraying the skies and sort of stopping the sun from coming out, you're not going to get much sun anyway.
What's the point? But then it again makes me wonder. I know the farmers do this for money, and I suppose if you're a business owner in any way, money is a kind of a driving force. But as the farmers, I always think that majority of the farmers are. I know they still obviously have to supply for their family, but I think they'll be like, well, do you know what? No, because I want to keep, and like, Mark been saying many times, there's things that their family have run. They kids, all they know is to how they run the farm. They don't want to sort of do this and then say, well, what do I do now? Like, my generation.
Trouble is, a lot of the kids, a lot of the younger people don't want to be on the farms. They've lost the sense that they are the custodians of the land. They have no notion about we should be keeping this for future generations. They're just going, well, we can get £100,000 for doing bugger all. Yeah, we'll have some of that. Thanks very much. Why not? Because farming isn't seeming to pay. A.G. Street, I don't know if you know of A.G. Street. He wrote books in the 1940s. He was a farmer. And he said he had two maxims. Axioms, I think the word is, that he was talking about in the 1940s, just as the war was coming to the end. And he said there are two things that farmers should go by. Firstly, the land should come first and people come second. That we should preserve the land more than we worry about people, because it's not just us. There's a future generation who will need that land. So every time we build more of these flipping rabbit hutches, these on farmland, or put solar panels, you've just taken out prime land for your kids, their kids, and so on. You've just obliterated their future. And the more you do that, the other thing that he said was, back then in the 1940s, is that farmers should not get subsidies. He disagreed with this whole notion. He said, if farmers get subsidies, then every business should have subsidies. Because, and his reasoning was, by making farmers have subsidies, they look like they're the poor industry and they're a charity, and that the government is continually having to give them charity money to keep them going. They can't stand up on their own. So the public then view them as, oh, they're farmers, they can't survive on their own, which I think is very true. And of course, as the government gives them subsidies, they're also then saying, here's some policies to go with it. This is what you've got to do if you're going to get our money. And so then they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because they need the money now, but they have to do what the government tells them, hence the power of DEFRA. And
because if they didn't give them the money, then the farmers can have negotiate, not with the supermarkets, but they have more power over their
absolutely
for their staff, rather than if you subsidize for however little or however much they give them, they can probably be technically better off if we haven't gone so far down the line of the farming.
Well, if we hadn't cheapened food to the point, if we hadn't just gone, well, we'll just make food the cheapest it can be, and we'll just fill it with fillers and preservatives and artificial flavors, and we'll dumb it down to a dumb bunch of people who are going to go in each, and we'll put them in boxes with colorful things and say it's a nutrient dinner, and you can radiate it to bits so there's nothing left in it in your microwave, and then you can shove it in your mouth and it's going to make you ill, and then you end up down the hospital having some chemotherapy or whatever it is as a result of this, and die nice and early. If we hadn't have done that, and we'd kept people going around the table, and if and food had been a premium, because food is medicine. It's the thing that keeps you going. If we were growing food properly, organically, healthily, and people were eating that, we wouldn't be in half the problems. People's brains would be working fully instead of at sort of half measure. And when that thing happened in 2020, and they said, oh, you've got to lock down and all of this nonsense, if people had been eating proper, healthy, nutrient full food, they may have had the common sense when the government turns around and says, oh, we've got a solution, we'll inject you with something, then most people would have said, no, thank you, we don't need that, we've got an immune system. But we've been dumbed down by not the farmers themselves, but they have been conned. And that's where I think it's the blame is straight with the government and the people pulling the strings. And but it's happened on our watch. And we now need to call it out, and we need to say, actually, do you know what? We don't want these big commodities. We want to get back to lots of small farms. So instead of that saying no farmers, no food, it really should say more farmers, more food, more real food.
Absolutely. Almost want to high five you then, but
There you go.
Absolutely. We say with the food, the old days, right, where the food, like you say now, it's a privilege. Not say it's a privilege. We look at it for granted because, you just pick on this and it's just like whatever is and whatever package it is. The old days when people used to sit down, like we're talking about, excluding the mobile phones and everything else, people used to sit down, and people used to, pray to say thank you for the food. Not that they're praying to say thank you, but for the farmers, for the food. And if people then had a better diet, be more restricted in the calories, but to be fair, it wouldn't hurt. Generally nowadays, I wouldn't think, if you train your bodies to just eat a little bit less of rather than stuff, but because it's just there, openly laid out in all the packages, people like,
we're so weak, aren't we? We're so weak, we can't resist it. All that lovely sumptuous chocolate and that turkey pumped with all sorts of steroids, or goodness knows what it is. We go, we must have that, because we're so weak. We're so feeble. And
because we're so used to it. We've been fed
But
this.
you don't see animals in the wild like that. They don't just get themselves all fat and porky walking about going, there was so many rats in there, I had to eat them all. They don't do it. Obviously, pet owners will feed their little, you see these little poor little dogs, these fat little sausage dogs, little pigs going, porkies going along. And then you look at the owner and go, yeah, you're feeding half of that box of chocolates that you buy every week.
I love him so much.
I love him so much that he's so fat that, unfortunately, only 2 years old, he just exploded on my carpet because he was too big. This is the thing. I mean, we can all survive on one proper, decent meal a day.
Yeah.
And
fully
you might
constructed, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, and you might graze on a few berries or some nuts or just a bit of cheese or something in between. Depends how strenuous our life is, but most people are sitting down in front of a computer. They're not, like in the old days, doing a 12-hour laboring day in the fields with a scythe, where they needed to supplement their food with beer and things like that, which never made them drunk because they were
Nothing wrong with that, Richard. Nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not. Absolutely. I mean, I'm all for it because they needed the energy, because they're all wine. There we go. But these days we're just so sedentary and we're so lazy. The thing is, we don't see it. And if I say it and I call it out like it is, people will go, oh, but Richard, oh, but no, but you're wrong. Oh, but, and they're justifying why, they're 10 stone over where they should be and what have you. And you see them, don't you? I mean, I know it's cruel, but you'll see them all wearing the shell suits and the sportswear, drinking, guzzling beer whilst they watch fit millionaires kicking a ball about and go, but they don't go out down the local park and kick the ball about themselves. It's, I mean, we're in a sad, we as a human being, we're in a sad state, but that doesn't mean it has to be like that forever. And I think all this hardship that we're seeing is actually a good thing, because we're facing it. We're looking in the mirror. I mean, I was bigger and eating chocolate bars. I'm not saying I'm by any means I'm not trying to pretend that I'm any better than anybody else. I was just the same. I've been played along by the government and fell for the advertising and thought, oh yes, I must have one of those Yorkies every time I get in the car, or a Mars bar a day helps you work
now,
play.
Yorkies,
It's only for boys, absolutely. Don't you have any? Don't you have any? It's only for the boys.
I'm offended, really, but
yes. Well, you're allowed to be offended these days. Be offended if you so wish.
I'm joking.
But we've all got. I think this is a good time because we're facing up to it. And actually, although it is quite scary, going back to the fear factor, at some point we do need to face up to reality and say, actually, do you know what? Yes, we do live a sedentary life. Yes, I don't have enough exercise. Yes, I don't eat proper healthy food. Yes, I'm going to turn away from the GP and the pharmaceuticals. Yes, I'm going to investigate other forms of alternative medicines and get myself back to normal. Yes, I'm going to talk to my neighbors. Yes, I'm going to bring the kids round and we're going to sit and enjoy the meal and turn off mainstream media. I think this is what we're going through. We're realizing that if we don't do those things, then it's a very
trouble,
it is a grim future for us. And I think people like yourself with your channel and myself and many others like Mark, we're the ones that are prepared to put our faces above the parapet and say, I think we need to do something. And if it helps one or two people go,
it's good enough, isn't it?
It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
Can I just, I know we're short on time with yourselves because you're bound to be going somewhere, but can I just ask you one thing? You're part of my little farm community. Can you just tell us a little bit more, because I seem to be loving the idea of only if you have time.
Of course.
Loving the idea of the little farming community. Like, it's not a commune thing, but you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, well, it's not my idea or anything like that. There's a lovely chap called Kiva and his girlfriend called Law, who came up with this concept of buying some land. They had the money, they bought the land, and they wanted to set up a farm or a farming community in which other people could invest in the land, but not just buy a chunk of land. That's it, that's yours, and thanks very much, away you go. But also to be part of a thriving group of people. So they've got something like, I think it's something like 18 or 20 acres of land in two big fields, something like that. And so people have invested, and they've got different tiers of membership, if you like. So some people have bought bits of land from them, but there's obviously covenants to say they can't just sell that land to somebody and so they can put a house on in the middle of
course,
their there's obviously sort of fair restrictions. But the point is that they then are part of a community, and then there's lower tiers where people just pay a little bit and they have access to the land. They can come in, they can help grow, they can help look after the animals. They've got pigs, they've got cows. They've just got cows, some Jersey cows, which they're now milking to get raw milk. They have chickens and ducks, and they have lots of stuff that they're growing. So it's a multi-tiered farm that all sorts of people can get involved at different times. They do have some permanent employees now who are there to do the farming. So in other words, you could invest in it even if you were miles away and just wanted to come down at weekends, perhaps camp in the field.
You can. Okay, that's good.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people do that, but I think I mean the other problem is, of course, they've got all the bureaucracy that goes with it with the bloody councils, and so they're looking at ways to make it much more in the private rather than in the public, so that they can turn around to the council and say, sorry, none of this is your business. Actually, it's our own jurisdiction. That's very hard hoop to jump through, but I do think that's possible, and I think we're going to see more of that as people start to say, actually, we don't want your bureaucracy and nonsense because you're not on our side.
But it's their land, right? If
it is their land. Yes.
It's not like it's have to be answering to farming thing. It's kind of slightly different commune, really. So they should really needing to answer to.
Well, when you buy a piece of land, there's I think it's an AP1 form or field that you write. You have to fill in, and it automatically, if it's done by a solicitor, it'll say, who's your local authority. And if you put in your local authority and you choose it from a drop-down menu, if you're doing it online, you have effectively given them the jurisdiction over you. Because it's a sneaky little way of saying, all right, okay, so you've basically agreed to letting them and their rules and their planning rules now govern what you do. Whereas if you put yourself in, or your own firm, whatever it is, your business, as your jurisdiction, then you're the ones that take control of it. However, there may be things like you have to look after the perimeter roads, which could cost several £100,000. So you do have to think about it very carefully. In their case, there's only a dirt track down, so I don't think they'd have to do too much. But they do have neighbours, and the neighbours have complained because the neighbours before just saw a field. Now there's people digging and people with cows and pigs. Well, I know. I mean, if you go back several hundred years, that's what people did. No one had councils coming in saying, oh, you can't have a pig. We all had pigs. We all had cows and things. Many people lived with these bloody animals. Stank to high heaven. So I think that this is the beginning of a revolution where people will start to sort of go, hang on, what's the most important thing in life? Do I want to go and spend 10 hours a day under strip lights in front of a screen selling insurance? Or do I want to be outside milking a cow and drinking raw milk and growing my own food, being in a thriving community, singing, dancing, laughing, and all of that? Maybe a fraction of the money, but does the money really matter if you're having fun? What is life about at the end of the day?
If people can afford to, I think it's a brilliant idea. I don't know what the cost involved, but do people have an ability, if they grow or contribute to growing, does that food get then shared between the people that invest into it? Or if you just invest into land, you could just come and have a look at the stroke cow and go home? Or are you able to share some produce from it?
Yes, you can have access to the produce, which is being sold in a little shop. So I assume it's not being sold to the public because it's really a private members thing. So they can't sell it to the public. But the concept is that if they're growing their own food and people are coming in, it's going to be cheaper, fresher, organic. You can be part of it. But I mean, the magic of it, if anything, is that you're not having to be on your own. And again, it comes back to right where we started about if you're a prepper on your own, or you're trying to do a small holding on your own, you break a leg, or you're just feeling ill, or whatever it is, you can't do it. But if you've got a community of people and you're all learning from one another, and you're all having a go at milking the cow and getting kicked in the face or weed or pooed on, you know, the sort of, but you're back down to it, and you're all sort of doing the weeds, getting the weeds out, or putting in the potatoes, or whatever it is, harvesting the tomatoes. You're all coming together. It's about a way of life rather than just about growing commodities and going, I've got that, thanks very much. It's getting rid of that I'm all right, Jack mentality and being
there's always going to be
that was it.
No, there's always going to be somebody that would not going to be pull their weight, though. It's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, but then I dare say they wouldn't join it.
No, but because in the long term, potentially, like, if it were to happen. But I love the idea. Like, I think Mark said they've launched the website with the areas of the land that farmers are prepared to rent out. But I don't think it's quite enough. Well, not in Wales, I don't think. But it's a great idea. I think I would love to. Personally, I would love to have land. My husband, let's buy a farm, let's move out, buy a farm and just like grow our own stuff. Would love to be in somewhere in the country, but if that's not possible, then to be able to be part of a community like this, or renting a part of somewhere where community can do this, I'm all up for it. Although the moment I'm still like, as a prepper, you're like this at the moment. But depending what's coming our way, still. Let's talk about the food insecurity first. That's a great way of fighting the potential of what is potentially coming our way.
The only thing I would say at the moment is, and I think this will take years to sort out, is despite the fact that people are setting up these communities, the trouble is we're still so ingrained in going to a supermarket, having things quickly. We're still very egotistical. Oh, it's my idea. We should do my idea. No, I don't want your idea. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
The arguments will happen because we're not used to being in communities anymore where we share and we are open-minded. We've forgotten those skills.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Even in the community with 100%.
And that's the biggest hurdle. And I've heard of some communities where they've started it, they've all end up arguing, they've taken their money and they've gone, right, it's my ball, I'm going home, you can't play. And this is a hurdle that will be difficult to get over, I think. But that doesn't mean that we mustn't stop trying, because eventually and actually the dark forces who are pushing all these sort of agendas and things are helping us get back to what truly we want, because it's making us say that's intolerable. What you're offering is not life. And although we are arguing and bickering over here, at least just for 10 minutes, I can walk over into that corner. I can fume, but I can look at the buttercups. I can sit there and, watch the landscape and watch somebody else plant. And at least I'm there, rather than whatever crap they want to throw us with 15-minute cities, digital ID, CBDCs, poisoned food and all the rest of it. Anything is better than what they're offering. And I think people are waking up to that.
But would you not think, Richard, that over the time, if that's their true agenda of them creating whatever they want us to be in the corner, whatever they want us to be, they still find a way to tackle the communities that are potentially coming up? And
I think they will, but the thing about us is that we are creative. They're not creative. That all they can do is straight lines. We can do wonderful, beautiful curves. We can adapt. We can mold ourselves. They're rigid. They've got their agenda. They've got their timeline. They've got this is how we're going to do it. But we can circumvent that. We are what is the guerrilla warfare? We can just move about and regroup, group over here, go over there, do something. Every time I eat an apple, if I'm in the van driving somewhere, I'll throw the apple out and plant a tree. So somewhere along the M1 or the A27 or wherever it is, I'm planting these trees where perhaps in 10, 15 years time, there'll be trees with apples.
Exactly. That's how they're on the side of the road, aren't they?
Yeah, you see them. And of course, we should do more of that, just planting seeds randomly in unusual places. And the food will start to, grow. And how do you stop that?
Yeah.
Other
Wait,
than
one question,
spraying the sky? Yeah, go on.
When you're in the car, when you eat your apple, do you do this?
Of course.
You know, the people used to rub the apple on the
polish,
to get off of the
polish
wax.
the skin, get rid of the wax.
That?
These days, get rid of the aluminium from them.
Do you do that? How do we do
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Polish off.
Of course you do. You take the little label off. Although I try to buy, I mean, I haven't been into a supermarket for 6 months to buy any food. Only farm shops.
Okay.
So because
apples though, obviously apples seasonal, aren't they?
Yes.
So you only eat like really seasonally. Try to.
Well, I get a Riverford's veg box, so they get apples from overseas, but they're organic.
Right. Okay.
Because I mean that's Riverford's thing, and I think if they weren't organic or people found out, it would be everywhere. I mean they are quite stringent. I don't necessarily agree with Guy Watson, who runs it, because he's very much into global warming, and I think that's all a load of old cobblers. But generally, I think Riverford is probably one of the best of the veg box schemes. They're not as woke as Abel and Cole, who I gather are not that I've actually used their services. Probably very nice. Please don't sue me. But I gather they are a little bit woke. And so I get some basic veg, but mostly I'll get my meat, grass-fed food, grass-fed cows, rather, beef, and all of that, and pig food, bacon, sausages, that sort of stuff, from a farm that I trust and can see, and I've spoken to the farmer, and we get raw milk from there. It's a 7-mile trip. It's 14 miles round trip, so it's not easy. And I live, the supermarket's right behind my house, so I can tell you, at first it was like, I just nip over. And I won't go into supermarkets. I just think I want to boycott the big supermarkets. They've got too much of the share. Also, they've got all that facial recognition technology coming in.
Oh, really?
And the cameras are bloody everywhere. Who wants that? So if I want some bleach, or I need a new toothbrush or something like that, like we all do, I use the corner shop. It's a little corner shop, one-man band type thing. All right, I still have to buy the big brands because they don't have their own brands. That's where I hold my hands up. But and I pay a little bit more. But I would rather the money went to him and his family, because it's going in the local economy, than going to the supermarket behind me or any of the other big supermarkets. And then I put all the rest of the money in cash to the farm.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. If you're able to do that, then that's brilliant. That's
of course, not everybody can do that. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm defunded at the moment, so I don't know how long I can do this for. But to me, you see, food now is much higher on my agenda.
Right.
Food is very close to the top. So I'd rather spend the money on the food because I know it's going to keep me healthy than I don't have Netflix and Amazon Prime or whatever the BBC license thing is. I don't
think people paying for this now anymore. I think it's people would have going over it now. No?
We don't drink. I might occasionally have something, but we don't drink regularly. So our outgoing bills are quite small. I've paid off the mortgage, so it's only utilities, and I use the bare essentials. As I mentioned before, I've got a wood-burning stove, so I can cook my food with my wood-burning stove. I can heat the house with the wood-burning stove. I can heat my water with the wood-burning stove, so I can have a bath or wash up. And then if I wash my clothes in the washing machine, which admittedly is electricity, I hang them up in the kitchen and I dry my clothes. So I don't use a tumble dryer or anything like that.
No,
save an absolute fortune. And then I buy the logs from a bloke who's 3 miles away, who has a contract on the South Downs to take out certain trees, which he seasons and delivers to me. So again, the money I spend on pretty much all of that goes into the local economy. So I'm not
Yeah.
giving it to the electric companies and the gas companies.
Yeah.
They can all sod off.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing way to be, Richard. It's admiring to get to that stage. It's hard for many of us, just as families with young children as well. It's kind of the convenience have to prevail in financial things as much as we love to. We now find the place for the milk. We found a little local the meat. It's like a deli type thing locally, but it's still things are quite a bit more. So we're trying to do a little bit, but it's very hard for generally. For
don't think that I'm trying to be like a saint. I mean, I'm 61,
no.
so I'm able to do this. When I was in my 40s bringing up the kids, we were buying all the crap from the supermarkets, but I was ignorant. I didn't know what I knew now. And if I did know now what I knew, if I did know then what I know now, it would be a completely different thing. But I didn't. We bought the kids all the tat and everything else, and I'm completely ashamed of it. But you can't do anything about your past. So I'm no saint. I'm just fortunate in this at this moment. But if I get banned off YouTube completely or can't get back to any sort of income from them or whatever, I'm stuffed. But I've come to that point where I realize the sunrise and the sunset and viewing that and going for country walks and eating wholesome food are the things I want to do. I don't need to watch the telly. I don't need the trinkets. I don't need a fast car. I don't need, all the things that a lot of people are chasing. I don't need a job that pays, all these things. I mean, I think whether it's age or wisdom or both, you get to a point in your life and you start to think, actually, what is life about? Is it all the stuff that we're told in the adverts and in schools and in television programs that we're conditioned into having to think, oh yeah, I must have this kitchen and it must look like that, and I must have a car that looks like this, and I must follow the herd.
The neighbors, absolutely.
Exactly. And it takes something to say no. I'm going to live in squalor and be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I must say that it's taken us, I think, but we realize this a bit now, sooner rather than later. I think to what, like before, like I mentioned to you earlier, the need for certain things like designer handbag, shoes. When we're living in Brighton, it kind of was a must because you're in that community of people that everybody needed to have this. And if you look funny if you haven't had the best designer handbag, that thing. Unfortunately, yes, for people it does exist. It's that burden that's been upon you of where you live. So after moving to Wales, it's suddenly it's like, oh, I don't even have to, don't have to try so hard because it's nobody here to impress, because people here are a bit more easygoing, and then generally with time it's just how it goes. And totally now all I want, before rather than handbags and shoes, now I want is the house in the country, a couple of acres and some more chickens and a cow. Do you know what I mean? That's what it is. And as you said, knowledge or wisdom, or just understanding of really how bad things gotten in the world, to understand that really none of this stuff is matter, because it can just get taken away, or in any point. So the best things you have is, you say, it's nature, and just being out and about just rejuvenates you. I find this with myself anyway.
That said, I wouldn't mind. That said, I wouldn't mind some handbags and shoes. I think they'd look very nice. They do me very well. No.
Well, it's such nicely, a bit of good shoes.
No, stop mucking about. Outrageous. Brilliant. Well, I think we put the world to rights there, haven't we?
We have. Well, thank you. We have digressed a bit from the prepping with palming, but we've covered a lot of things. So it was absolutely great pleasure of having you, Richard.
It's been a pleasure.
Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yes, of course. If you want a balding, moaning old fart on the show, I'm more than happy.
But you say it's nice to have a different perspective, because obviously we talk about certain things, I talk about certain things, and it's just nice to have somebody else with more experience of talking to other people and a little bit more of understanding of the whole thing to shed some light. We don't necessarily all have to agree, as you say, on everything you say, but the key point, we share the opinions, and the people can make their judgments on what they want to believe from either, isn't it? That's what it is.
Absolutely.
We have choices in life, and once we have choices, we should goddamn enjoy them.
Indeed. Amen to that.
Well, thank you everybody, guys, for joining and for commenting, and thank you ever so much, Richard, and we'll hopefully see you very soon again, okay?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Anna. I've really enjoyed it. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.